Darwin is gearing up for the arrival of the Indonesian president. Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono will touch down in the top end tomorrow for a two-day visit. He'll hold meetings with the Prime Minister Julia Gillard, who's just touched down in Darwin as part of annual meetings between the two countries.
The Prime Minister Julia Gillard last met with the Indonesian President during the East Asia Summit in Bali late last year. Their high-level meeting fulfills an agreement between the two countries to meet every year to forge greater cooperation.
I talk frequently to the President of Indonesia. We've got a strong and robust relationship between our two countries.
It's another boost for Darwin, which hosted the US President Barack Obama late last year.
Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. Indonesia are our nearest neighbours, very good friends, and it will be great to welcome the Indonesian President.
Let's know about Darwin. With the visit with my president to Darwin, so now people will see what's happening in Darwin.
But it's not the President's first visit to Australia's northern capital. He made a flying stopover in 2005, where he met with the former Chief Minister Claire Martin. Australia's political impasse on asylum seekers is tipped to dominate discussions.
President Yudhoyono, I'm sure, will be aware of events in Australia. I will say to him that the government is still working and working hard to get an outcome here.
Among discussions to boost trade relations, disaster response is high on the agenda.
You have the hardware, but we are more experienced and more in where the natural disaster happening in Indonesia. So with that, we can combine and we could work together.
The President will arrive in the afternoon and a state dinner will be held at Parliament House. The high-level talks kick off on Tuesday. Emma Masters, ABC News, Darwin.
The carbon tax isn't the only thing on Julia Gillard's mind. The Indonesian president has arrived in Darwin for talks on trade, aid and asylum seekers. Australia's hinted it may give more help to Indonesia to bolster its efforts to stop the boats. Karen Binney reports.
A close neighbour has dropped in for a visit. After being greeted by the Prime Minister...
How are you?
I'm very well, President.
Thank you. And a long line of handshakes, it was straight down to business. Australia's signed over 4 C-130s to Indonesia.
It's also, of course, very important that not only does Australia have a capacity to render humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, but that also we help Indonesia to lift its own capability and capacity.
The leaders will hold formal talks tomorrow. One of the items on the agenda is asylum seekers and how to reduce the number of people leaving Indonesia for Australia. The government says about 300 boats have been stopped over the past 3 years.
I think it's underappreciated the number of successful disruption events that occur through close cooperation between the relevant authorities in Australia and Indonesia working closely together.
Australia's already helped Indonesia bolster its efforts.
It includes the purchase of 3 vessels for Indonesia. It also involves the construction of about 12 police stations along the Indonesian archipelago.
There could be extra commitments during bilateral talks.
If in the course of the next 24 hours we come to the conclusion there's even more we can do, obviously we will take that up.
3 boats have arrived in 3 days, but Labor's indicated the biggest challenge for the government isn't doing a deal with Indonesia. It's getting a deal with the Coalition or the Greens to give Australia a border protection policy. Karen Binney, ABC News, Canberra.
Near neighbours and close friends, the talks spanned defence cooperation and trade to the asylum seeker issue, along with the problem of Indonesian minors in Australian prisons who are caught up in the asylum debate.
It's a very great honour for us to welcome you to Australia and particularly to Darwin. Mr President, we have a very strong interest in each other's prosperity, and I've appreciated our discussion on how we can work together to strengthen the prosperity of both of our nations.
Thank you. There was much to discuss and some healing required on the issue of the live export beef trade suspended by Australia last year. Now there's a promise of Australian support for the Indonesian industry.
For the medium to long term, we could consider cooperation in the field of investment in cattle and beef in Indonesia, which no doubt will bring benefit, real benefit for both our countries.
Darwin is the city that hosts the US Marines, now on training rotation in Australia. It's been a sensitive subject, but perhaps not anymore.
I think Indonesia is signalling between the lines that it's comfortable with what's going on. This meeting would not have taken place in Darwin if the President was uncomfortable with the cooperation that's emerging between the United States and Australia.
And the hope from the Australian side is for more defence cooperation. Defence Minister Stephen Smith has signalled planning's underway for three-way Indonesian, Australian, US defence exercises early in 2013, and that China has been asked to send an observer.
If that comes to pass, that's a significant development. That shows Indonesia wanting to engage in a more strategic way in regional defence planning.
The handover of 4 C-130s is an important step in defence cooperation, and President Yudhoyono indicated they would be put quickly to use.
I wish to say thank you for the transfer of the Hercules C-130, which was signed yesterday by both our defence ministers. And also these airplanes will be very important for Indonesia to develop and implement its role in humanitarian issues and missions, and also emergency missions in natural disasters.
2 years ago, when Kevin Rudd was Prime Minister, President Yudhoyono addressed the Australian Parliament and called on Australians to update their image of their northern neighbour.
The most persistent problem in our relation is the persistence of age-old stereotypes, misleading, simplistic mental caricature that depicts the other side in a bad light.
That visit resulted in a pledge for the leaders to meet annually, and Prime Minister Gillard and President Yudhoyono have met also at meetings like the G20. But according to Indonesian expert Professor Andrew McIntyre, bilateral images need further updating.
It's interesting to see the main thing that's been picked up in the visit so far is the gift by Australia of the 4 C-130s, this traditional notion of Australia giving things to help poor Indonesia. That's true, but it doesn't capture the deeper reality. The deeper reality is Australia needs Indonesia's cooperation. We need it for defence purposes, we need it for managing the flows of people, and we need it for economic purposes.
Indonesia is a huge and growing economy. It got through the global financial crisis, and it wants more Australian investment. On this trip, President Yudhoyono has brought a business delegation plus governors from provinces in the east of the country, all pushing an important message. Australia is currently the 14th largest investor in Indonesia. President Yudhoyono wants it to move into the top 10.
Make Indonesia your hub for production and innovation. Having plants, factories and business centres in Indonesia will open bigger market for your businesses.
On asylum seekers and people smuggling, both sides pledged support for the Bali process, and Indonesia wants more young crew members picked up on asylum boats released from Australian prisons.
We hope that the repatriation of the remaining underage seafarers can be accelerated.
Indonesia wants another 54 young people released from jail.